Welcome, everyone. It's Matt, and today we're going to talk about a Lapras Gmax rerun during the end of the Water Week. This will be on July 19th. This is something that I feel is a little important, especially for the Northern Hemisphere trainers, especially ones that had a cold snap happen during their event, which I believe was during the February or even January timeframe. I remember my area being hit with a absolute cold snap that was giving us minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, or at least wind chill factors. So with that, let's get involved. One of the things I was going to do was actually show the previous Gmax battle activities, as they haven't changed a great deal. We do have some changes thanks to the Water Week, and obviously our feature Pokemon is going to be a Gigantamax Lapras, which is a shiny. My son got two, so I traded one with him and have very poor IVs. My main goal is to get a good shiny IV one, or at least one that I can lucky trade again. The timed research will be starting available Monday, July 14th, and will finish at July 19th at 5 p.m., basically when the Lapras Gmax battle ends at your local time. If you complete the timed research, you'll encounter a Dynamax Pisimian, which is a decent attack Pokemon, but there are much better out there. But if this is the only one that you have, it is still useful. It will also award some candy, max particles, which is going to be much more important overall than you think with the small amount of max particles that you have. And these will be very helpful in general. So, with the event bonuses on Friday, 5 p.m. until Saturday at 8 p.m., and that's Pacific time. So, on the Eastern Coast, it will be 8 p.m. or in the evening, and depending where else in the world. And for some trainers, this will kind of stink because in Australia, you won't be able to use this on Friday. But if you are in the Americas and I think Great Britain, you will be able to use this trick where with the max particle collection increased to 1600, you can guarantee yourself to get there during this time. Before the midnight time period. More importantly, though, you can always just guarantee yourself to do this trick by being able to fill up to over 1500. But with the 1600, you will be able to sneak one more free battle in. What's going to happen is we get 8 times max particle spots from power spots, and you will be able to get 2x times particles for exploring. So you can get up to really 8,000 or 800, sorry, 20 max particle, and you then can get because I don't think the 20 gets multiplied, but if it does, that's 960. And even if then you can only do one, no, you can still do both and still then add. So, what you're best going to do is you're going to do a max particle take with the 800. Then you're going to do your two max particles from exploring. They're going to be 300 apiece. So if it's 960 plus the 600, that gives you 1550, which will actually be even better, but or 60, sorry. But it should be 820 plus the 600, which would be 1420. Then you grab another max particle spot, and you're at 2200 basically. Then you take the max particles that you see from the timed research, which should be 800, and that gives you 3000 particles banked up before you go through Saturday doing the same thing. 3000 plus the 2200 is 5200, which is enough to do 7 battles for free, and that's before you buy the event ticket, where your max particle collection limits increase to 5,600. The math there is a little bit more complicated, but from a free standpoint, you get that 5,200. Plus, if you're not don't have bought the max battle pass, the free max particles should just get you enough to that 5,600 limit. And then on top of it, if you have a community leader on Campfire, you get another 800, which will be 6,400. And that's an awful lot of max particles that you can get for free to be used on that Saturday if you follow that. And I know I don't have it spelled out there, so you might be repeating it much at times. That's a very easy way to be able to get at least a large amount of overall particles if you can do it or if you can stay up late enough in order to do so. For me, it will be 8 p.m., which is actually pretty easy for me on a Friday. And all in all, it's a great way. But on top of it, if you buy the event ticket for $4.99, the last time we had this back in February, it was $5. So we're saving a whole penny or whatever your pricing tier is in your local currency. The timed research will give you a max mushroom and 25,000 XP. The max mushroom is incredibly expensive. Honestly, not the main draw, but it is a nice little boost. But I try to avoid using max mushrooms pretty much at all costs just because of how expensive they are. And the only max mushrooms I have are from these event tickets. You will also receive the following bonuses. You'll get 2 times XP from max battles. If you're not level 50, that is a pretty decent boost to these max levels, especially with you being able to add on top of that a lucky egg. And then if you are willing to whale out the 200, which is really important for the Stardust with that, because you could get up to 150,000 Stardust per battle with a star piece as well. You could also get a large amount of XP from max battles as well. But the most important thing is the max particle collection limits increased to 5,600, which is 4,000 from the free event bonus for that Saturday, because it's effective from 2 to 5 p.m. local time only. These is the big one because even if the best bundles, a 3-pack will still cost around $3, and most bundles of those cost, I believe, $4.99. So it is worth it in that regards. But if you're trying to gain XP as well, that boost is pretty large, and you get 25,000 on top of it. The max mushroom is just a nice one on top. And if you're in a community that needs to usually use a max mushroom, then it's a really good deal. So let's go to Gmax Lapras. It takes increased damage from electric, fighting, grass, and rock. It is a reduced damage from water, 37.5 and 60.9% ice. And that's due to its somewhat unique water and ice combination. It is the best ice tank that we currently have from a pure damage reduction, but there are other Pokemon that actually take less damage overall on ice. The Lapras IV is 1435 through 1509 that you'll be seeing during this event, with the hundo being 1509 is the magic number. The attack is low, but that is kind of an ice and water type normalcy. The defense is a little bit lower than what I would expect in general, but it does have a very large HP pool and has been outclassed now with a couple of other Pokemon, especially Blissey and Snorlax, but it is still a very good healer in its own right and has a pretty good attack as well. Since it's a Gmax, the fast attack element doesn't really matter. So this is going to be a Pokemon that we are not going to be using ice for its fast attacks. Ice Shard and Frost Breath are all 1 second apiece. You're going to be primarily using Water Gun because it's a 0.5 second move. 0.5 seconds are the best moves. We will be doing some experiments during this round to try and show that through a more scientific method other than just going, yeah, it seems to work better. But we will be going, if we're using Lapras against Lapras, we'll be using Psywave because it is not resisted. And that is also a 0.5 second move. And for Gmax, this is kind of nice that we have 2 different moves at 0.5 seconds, because a Gmax will always be using its Gmax Resonance, which is going to be Ice, and that has a 350 to 450 depending on what level that you have it at. For fighting against it, though, it has 7 different charge moves with 4 different elements. And oddly enough, that the charge moves for ice are kind of the least damaging, at least if over time, with Ice Beam and Blizzard both being kind of slow. Blizzard is the much more dangerous one compared to Ice Beam. Its dragon move is Dragon Pulse, which is also not really a very damaging move in its own right. Skull Bash is kind of damaging at 130 with 3 seconds, one of the ones that I'm going to be worrying about. But the ones that I'm most worried about is Surf for water, and that's because it's a 1.5-second move. Yeah, it doesn't do as much damage over time, theoretically, as what Skull Bash or Blizzard would do. But because it's 1.5 seconds, it has a potential to hit 3 times if you're not using the right cadence of attacks, aka focusing only on fast attacks with 0.5 seconds. So Surf can be a little bit more dangerous than Skull Bash or Blizzard or Hydro Pump because of that. Before we go to the best tanks, we're going to look at Lapras Gmax for its damage capability. Ice doesn't really have a great deal to take a look into, but we do have Suicune, Cryogano, Articuno, and Lapras, and none of these Pokemon are known for their attack prowess, but Lapras has the best attack in general, and that is due to its Gmax bonus. And with that, it will lead the ice capability, but frankly, ice is kind of the most or second most niche that I know of for actual damage usage in general. And with its lower attack stats, I don't think we're going to use it much unless if the Pokemon we're attacking has a 256% weakness in ice. And generally, we will be using something like Zacian or Gmax Gengar if they're neutral and ice is a 60% weakness instead, just because of the large difference in attack variation there. All right, so let's take a look at the best tanks and all the damage being taken. I try to take now the best 8 Pokemon in general. Right now, we really have a top 7, and I have Cryogano as my 8th unit. And arguably, there could be a couple of other Pokemon put in there, but there's a huge difference between the top 7 and 8. Uh, Zamazenta and Blissey are almost always going to be included for these tanks or damage sponges, depending on exactly, what you're thinking of. But right now, because Zamazenta is going to be having so many of the elements covered with 37.5 and Blissey is all neutral, that Zamazenta really is going to be the best damage sponge in general, especially if you have the max guard leveled. The reason why this is important is even if you don't use shields, if you have max guard leveled, or if you have a max guard on Zamazenta, it will provide a shield, and that shield will give between 20 and 60 additional HP, and also a benefit of potentially increasing the rate of a single attack focused on you, which will help the rest of the team avoid damage as they can keep attacking. With that, though, Zacian is very interesting because of its insane dragon resistance at 75.6%. It actually takes little to no damage from Dragon Pulse. It can take like 15 of these before it will faint, and that's with no shields. And so when we start having the Latios and Latias as expected, probably at the end of the month for Dynamax, Zacian will be by far the best tank because of that. As it is just absolutely insane in its defense plus its resistances. Best ice tank though is Suicune. Suicune does take the least amount of damage. It is slightly. Oh, actually, no. The damage here looks like it is going to be Zamazenta. And, sorry, Suicune is the best water because of the resistances. I'm sorry. I'm so used to actually Suicune being the best ice tank. But Lapras is actually just behind Samacenta with being ice bound. And also the best neutral is, or normal attack for Skull Bash will be Samacenta as well. Blastoise is pretty much generally going to be the best overall if you're using shields, but it's max HP and low attack. I think you'd be better off doing Zamazenta or Blissey than Blastoise. Same with Urshifu as well, and Cryogano is on here as it does have pretty good defenses on ice, but it just doesn't compare to the rest of the Pokemon in general. So my top 4 choices are going to be Zacian, Zamazenta, Blastoise, but Blastoise with Bite, and Blissey. Also, take a look at each of the attacks here. These are the best attacks that I can take a look and say that this will be your best chance to fill up the max meter as quickly as possible. And you do notice that some of these are 1 seconds because you don't have very much of a choice. But all 4 of my top choices have 0.5 seconds as well. And if you want to use Lapras, because you don't use Lapras, Lapras can be used, especially against ice and water, and do a pretty good job of surviving. Now, the best attackers for Lapras is a less of a talking point here. Interestingly enough, Gmax Gengar actually slightly outproduces Zacian, and I have basically given out all the Pokemon that do more damage than both Zacian and Gmax Gengar, which is in fair a decent amount because of the weaknesses that Lapras has is pretty common for the Pokemon that we have. But Gmax Rillaboom does by far the most damage, followed by Gmax Machamp and Gmax Toxtricity. Those 3 are basically in a league of their own. I would argue that Rillaboom is an S+, Max Champ, or Machamp, sorry, is an S. Actually, Max Champ is kind of a good nickname for Gmax Machamp. And Toxtricity is an A+, with then having a whole bunch of others being in the A category. Grass is weak to ice, and fighting has no resistances, so these are only for transformation attacks, and Toxtricity just isn't really capable of absorbing hits either. The one frustrating thing from a champ is that for counter, it's its fastest attack at 1 second, but since you're not using it as a tank, it doesn't really matter. And I do have Scratch if you are in kind of a desperate need, or Spark for Toxtricity for that 0.5 seconds to try to fill it faster. But looking at this, Rillaboom is about 10% stronger at level 50 than Machamp, and Machamp is about 10%, or sorry, it's 5% better than Machamp, and Machamp is 10% better than Toxtricity. The Pissimian that we are getting for free is still stronger than Gmax Gengar and Zacian, and it's actually about 10 to 13%, depending on which one you're looking at. So it's not a horrible choice, but if you have a Zacian at level 50 and your Pissimian is still at level 20, just go ahead and use the Zacian instead and save your Stardust. It's just not really going to be used a great deal, and it is quite expensive to raise them all. Just from a more of a saving your Stardust. All right, for the Gmax Lapras, for Ice, it is the best attacker and healer, and kind of the worst tank because it has the lowest defense. But if we're going for the ability to absorb damage, it is probably the Ice tank that we're going to use. If it had just a little bit more defense, I think it would be insanely useful. If you look at this, though, on the normal, I have it ranked as a low attacker and a good tank in general, and that is the case because being a low ice tank is still a very strong tank in general because ice is really dominated by very tanky and high defense of units or Pokemon. And with that, in general, it can still tank really well. It's just that there's a lot of top tier tanks, not the best tanks, but top tier tanks in ice. And as a healer, it's still quite good. But generally, if we're bringing in a healer, it's just going to be Blissey. Even though I do argue that Snorlax kind of works a little better than Blissey, because it just can attack stronger, much stronger than Blissey can, and it still does pretty good heals in general, as most Pokemon really only need to be healed twice and not three times, because you're generally just overhealing at that point. So we're going to now get into the Mega Units for Candy. On Candy, it's important because we are so desperate to look for those XLs, and it gives us a better chance to get XLs. And on top of it, we get bonus regular Candy as well. And with the water and ice group, there is a large amount of Pokemon that you can mega, but it is primarily dominated by water, as we only have two ice megas. Glalie, which we have not actually gotten, I believe, in over 2 years to be able to chance to get the mega energy, and Abomasnow, which we've only gotten once or twice. So ice just really we haven't seen, and I still actually need to get a Glalie mega. So I'm really hoping that at some point we do see one of those. But for water, and also we will have Blastoise as our mega during the water event. So if you need more Blastoise mega, you will be able to get it during this event beforehand. Slowbro, Gyarados, Swampert, Kyogre, and Sharpedo, which isn't released yet, but at some point will if people are looking in the future. These are the six that are you most likely have more of, as we just don't get that much ice mega units in general. But it is important to do your best mega level. If you don't have a mega 3, make sure at least you have a mega 2. You still have enough time if you have the energy to do so. So what is my overall battle plan for Gmax Lapras? My team is going to be Rillaboom, Zacian, and Zamazenta. Zamazenta is going to take all the attacks other than Dragon. Zacian will be my backup, and Rillaboom is going to be my unit that gives the boom when it's transferred. And actually, I think it might be Gmax Rillaboom that does the drum roll for that horrible joke. Overall, though, I expect Lapras, just like beforehand, to be one of the more tanky raids overall, but it hits fairly weak. And now with the Pokemon that we have versus what we had beforehand, it's going to hit even weaker. The only major issue is Surf can be a problem, as a 1.5-second move can be spammed fairly rapidly. Generally, we were kind of happy when we hit Surf, as my group generally was using the 0.5 seconds. We were using Blastoise as our main tank with Bite. Back then, we did not have the ability to use Rock even at all, as that was implemented, I think, the month later. Might have been even later than that, but that's just me trying to go back from my memory banks. Make sure you use that 0.5-second move if you can, just especially if it uses Surf. And from what I remember of that battle, it did try to use Surf fairly often. Generally, it used only water and ice attacks. The dragon attack hit us fairly hard beforehand, but once again, we have the better Pokemon to use as counters now. But all in all, we have a large list of Pokemon to now choose from that will do large damage to it. So even though it will be tankier, it still shouldn't take that long. So is Gmax Lapras worth it for you? The answer is it is the best ice type attacker, and it is the best ice type healer. But right now, as an ice type attacker, that is incredibly niche, and honestly, we're not using ice for attacks at all. Its main use is going to be a healer that could do some very good damage thanks to its Gmax power, and ice has a better chance of doing extra effective damage than normal. So it should out damage Snorlax, but it slightly under heals compared to Snorlax. But for all of the raids that we have done, this is actually the first time I have suggested using it at all, and that's to fight itself. But if you are low on Gmax and your group is trying to get a start on this, this is a great one to start with. Even with Dmax, Rillaboom, and others, they will still do a pretty large amount of damage and will do more damage than Zacian will. And honestly, with Zacian and Zamazenta being able to take in from raids and be able to tank this very well, this is a good starter Pokemon Gmax for your community if you have enough in your community with Zamazenta and Zacian especially. It could be a very good starting point for you, and I think that's where kind of a lot of these are going. And on top of it, it was pretty important because, like in my communities, and then especially in the northeastern part of the U.S. and Canada, there was a really nasty cold snap during this last previous raid. I was going to try to do some of the battle analysis starting with Lapras, but I really couldn't because my phone was actually struggling to even being able to operate outside, and we were still kind of young enough in the time where we needed to communicate more. So in general, still going to be a lot of communities that don't have the Gmax Lapras, and it's something to at least add to the collection. And on top of it, it's a great way to get candies and all that for the Lapras, as it is kind of rare to see out in the wild. So with that, that's going to end my discussion on Lapras. With that, if you really enjoyed this channel and you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so. That really helps me and kind of helps me fuel myself to keep producing this content for you. On top of it, you can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/madguru. I have a Patreon you can go. And also, if you're interested in contacting me directly, I do have a link in Discord in the community page. That's kind of so bots don't keep signing in there instead of saying the thing in all of my addresses here. More importantly, though, I will try and do better next time. Enjoy your raids and good luck, and may all the shinies and shundos be with you.